She says there's a little boy in the back who wears his rollerblades. I said, you gotta get used to some of this stuff. She said he just rolls by my, he just comes down the aisle and rolls by me. I know. Just
Okay.
don't get in his way.
Grab your coffee. And we'll get started. This is going to be a great finish. I'm excited to try and draw some things all together here today with our de-churching subject. I know it's a smaller attended with the annual meeting and for whatever other reasons, but it is live streamed. Although I just now realized I forgot to send out a reminder of that this morning. Oh well. Hey, just a fun straw poll. How many of you, and please don't let any rumor, don't talk to Justin about it or the choir, but how many would you who go to the early service would be up for starting at 8:15 instead of 8:30? Hands?
8 o'clock. 7:30.
You are banned.
How about 5 o'clock?
How about those who would really not like 8:15 instead of 8:30? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. That's why 8:15 instead of 8. See, because I see those struggles. We're just struggle with doing what we want to do in worship and then having fellowship time and getting a lot of input that people are very frustrated because you don't have enough time to connect with people and chat in between services. So I'm just trying to think about how we accomplish that. That's why I wanted that straw poll. It's just a straw poll. Please don't say, we're changing worship. Just giving me some feedback. Wayne, be quiet. No. No, I love it. You got my back. All right, well, let's finish up today on our de-churching in America. Let's center ourselves with a prayer here. Gracious God, give us your Spirit. Be with us in our continued conversation. And let this bear fruit. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, as we've been looking at the casually de-churched and the de-church casualties, I've been curating from the book, The Great De-Churching of America, which has, through their very peer-reviewed, scientific, professionally done survey, has shown that we're in the midst of the greatest religious shift in our country's history, in the opposite direction as far as people worshiping and attending church. But I had I've gotten just great conversation from this class, great feedback, and I got a great feedback message this week that I wanted to just use as a springboard for our final session. And it helped me see that not only, like I talked about last week, we have a dilemma in how we reach out to the de-churched. The de-churched also have a dilemma. That they're also caught between a rock and a hard place. And the rock is, do I say something and risk hurting others or cause conflict? Or do I say nothing and not upset the apple cart or hurt feelings? Because sometimes, we're not talking about the casually de-church, but then also the point was that they wonder if underneath an answer like, well, I moved to a new community or COVID got me out of the habit, if there isn't something underneath that people are just not wanting to say. And it could be. But it did help me, and I wanted to share it because, and we'll get to this at the end of the class today, that there is a dilemma for someone who's got a disconnect to the church. I have a serious disconnect to an organization that I have been a part of in the past, and it's delicate. I can relate to what was said about the church. That, yeah, I don't want to be. My personality is not a rabble rouser, a I'm not really a Martin Luther reformer, even though I love Martin Luther. I probably would have chickened out or something, I don't know. But so I wanted to lift that up, and so that's just helpful. That was helpful feedback, and I think it's true. I found that I've expressed frustration. Please talk to me, but people don't, because they don't want to either be critical of me or critical of the church or someone else, or they feel they're going to be maybe doing something wrong. So they're kind of in a rock and a hard place too. Like, is it wrong for me to do this? Or am I going to be judged if I say something, or, express my struggle? And I'll talk about that at the end, one of the biggest learnings that we can have in regards to that. But I wanted to just share that, put that on the table. I think it was very helpful feedback. We've got all these things. I added more office hours and more conversation. How can your pastors in a church with 850 some members be more accessible to you? And we're not so big. I tell this to all the new members. I say, we are not so big that you don't have access to your pastors. But we are not going to know when you haven't been in church in 2 weeks. We might, some people, when they're not in church 1 week, I think something is seriously wrong, But others who come once a month, I'm not going to know when you're not there for 3 months sometimes. So there is that, how can I and Jonathan and Kim and others make ourselves more available? Because I think a lot of folks don't want to call up and bother Pastor Bill because he's so busy. I can tell you, there's nothing more, no, that's not true. I'm getting full of vibrato here. It's one of the most important things to me, hearing and listening and having faith conversations. Preaching the word's the most important. Okay, I'm going to give my sermon priority. But I would drop whatever administrative support I need to do as lead pastor and listen to someone who's struggling than anything else. And truly, if my inbox is so full I can't get to everybody, I'll go to the trustees and council and say, we need a new administrator or a new, because, man, people are talking and I don't have time to do this. We would do that. That's how important you are and the D Church are to me. So I'm thinking about that. Can we have an evening office hour or an afternoon office hour in a Starbucks, or I don't know, or somewhere, Austin Chase, whatever. Just where people, and then maybe even set up a half-hour, time slot so people could just sign up. I don't know. Something thinking about. Personal invites, you've gotten that message over and over. Please know how important your invite is to so many people, and many of whom that's all they need. That's it. So keep using the survey. I had one other person fill it out this week. We've got these teams of folks that we've talked about, doing better with keeping SLC people in relationships with each other. I'm going to keep harping on the reason for worship. I'll get to that at the end. And I struggle with people that work on Sundays, and that's a part of the de-churching. And with the exception of Lent, we don't offer anything else for those folks. So I was going to have you list your learnings. What didn't you see up there? But I'm going to hold off on that because there's some stuff I really want to get to. And so I think we'll get to it, but I want to go on and get started since we're a little late today. So the authors in their book, and remember I'm curating for you, give some advice to the D-church that they've been listening to and talking to and identifying different things and the reasons and why. And so I thought it was worthwhile to put these up there. To those who are frustrated with the church's either lack of political involvement or too much political involvement, and it's both sides. Both sides. they make the point that, well, the gospel comes with an ethic, that the church feels compelled to engage in the world's issues. So we got to understand that that's the impulse. But of course, then they're going to pull back from getting too politically, specifically involved. But I think what they're saying is, hey, even if you disagree with the involvement of your church politically, understand where it's coming from, that it's trying to live out a certain ethic in the world. Whether that's more on the traditional conservative side, or I hate these generality words, but because I don't think they're true anymore. There isn't just a one liberal conservative. I think those are almost useless terms anymore. But anyway, I didn't plan to say that. Or the church's reticence to engage. I think there needs to be some grace for the church there too, and I think that's what they're saying on that one. This is interesting, and this is from their research. Dechurching is happening among both the secular left and the secular right. Very conservative, secular people are dechurching in the secular realm, is what they mean. Conservative, what you would know as conservative in the secular right, they're dechurching too at the same rate that people on the so-called left are. And if either side is more passionate about politics of our country than about the gospel of Jesus Christ, something's wrong. I think they're right about that. So the hurt issue, their point is you don't have to return to where you came from. Sometimes, not with this church, of course. No, but yeah, this church as well. I want people to be connected to Christ, and if that works better down the street because of something that happened here, then, or they just can't do liturgy, they just can't do it, Well, maybe, I'm not suggesting that for anyone, but especially with some of the hurts that come from a really overbearing focus on the law and shaming, or, if you felt shamed in one place for whatever reason, don't throw in the towel on the whole church because I think is their point. I think that could be helpful. The streaming issue. Look what we just found from the Pew Research Center. This is just either this month or last month this came out. Roughly 1 in 5 Americans who typically attend services monthly have participated virtually, but not in person in the last month. 1 in 5. So what we know from many, many researches is that, and this is this section, 21, 21, 18, 18, 35, Catholic, more historically black church congregants are watching only online than others. This is really interesting. But Catholic 16, 18 mainline, 18 evangelical, Protestant general 21. Look at, however, this is all U.S. adults. And the Pew Research Center, I think I looked into their research parameters. I think there was a sample size of over 10,000 people or something like that. Pew is a very well-respected research company. So up here, attended in person and watched online or TV. So this is both. Only attended in person. So you have, what is that? 27% of the population of the U.S. in the last month has been in-person worship. Only watched online, another 16%. So what is that? 43% were in church in the last month in a worship service. Interesting. 57, I guess I could have done the reverse math, but 57% did not attend in person or watch online or TV. Interesting feedback. But notice the 16% here. So this is incredibly grace-giving to your lead pastor. Why? Because it keeps me up at night that we now worship 300 and not 375 after COVID. Now, if you're hearing that I'm all about numbers, no. I care less. I care that what we're doing here is engaging and bringing the gospel to people. And I'll give you a quick, honest thing. If COVID hadn't happened and I was the lead pastor and I saw that drop, I would be like, it may be time to really look at in everything that we're doing, including staff, including me. You know, but now I know that there's a lot going on here, and SLC and actually Russ Goodman, who's the head of faith-based expeditions with the company that we used for the recent Germany trip, he said he's interfaced with all kinds of churches, and all of them, the same thing. You're down at least a fourth or fifth of your usual. So there's something going on there. So bottom line, what they said is online worship, we got to tell you, de-church people, it's not worship in the fullest sense. It's not gathering. It's for people who can't be there on Sunday because of health issues, physical limitations. It's their lifeblood. It's for families at soccer tournaments and volleyball tournaments when they can't be there. It's for people when they can't, but it's not so that you can worship at home in your PJs. I know that sounds harsh, and we'll get to the end, but this is their point, not mine. I'm just sharing with you what they said. So somehow we've got to communicate that, and I'll explain, I think, why it's harder for us to kind of come down on that issue than maybe others. I don't know. The abuse issue, blessed are the little ones. Jesus' reach to people who are harmed and hurt. I know as a leader of a congregation, when Jesus says, if you cause one of these little ones, better for you to have gives me huge pause. Now, I'm a human being, I'm broken, but I'm in a position that has a lot of power, and I take that very seriously to not wound someone, especially with the law. But at the same time, so I think the message to those folks is Jesus cares about you so much that he would give this huge warning to those in authority, in positions of power. And so it's both a message to people, leaders, and it's a message to the wounded that, hey, Jesus cares. And so there maybe is a distinction. The church points to Jesus, but it is not Jesus. The church is a group of sainted sinners who are going to mess up sometimes. And in small ways, hopefully, but sometimes even in large ways. The isolation issue, they just simply want to enter the fray and say, folks, you need community. It's easy to back out, but you need to be connected. Over and over, psychological studies are showing that the two big increases in the suicide rate and all these depression rates are two things: COVID and the internet and social media and phones. You can just trace it. It goes slowly about the stable, and as soon as whatever year that was that everything, Facebook and everything started. Now, I don't mean to say those are evil. Anything can be used for evil and do bad things. But it's maybe controlling us and isolating us in a way that I think all technology has. I remember one presentation where they said, we used to on Sunday morning, this was way back, but we used to on Sunday morning gather at church, and then we'd go over and we'd just go to one person's house and then the next house, and we'd gather on the front porch. Now we don't do, then we started gathering around the radio. And then the TV came along, we started gathering around the TV. But at least there was some socialness to that. Now, we don't gather around anyone except for this. So, which is a powerful, great tool. Don't take my phone away from me. I'm working on my Spanish right now. Duolingo, it's a great app. Sorry, that was an outing. That's bad. Maybe I'll get some likes. Or maybe we'll be taken down from the internet. I don't know. The belief issue, the gospel is good news. We'll get to that when I give my final things. But now let's get to the author's advice to you and me, to the church. And it's similar to what we've uncovered already, but they say that this exposes that we're not doing enough with faith and spiritual formation in our congregations. We're not getting people rooted deep enough to where they can weather some of these storms. So it's another way to say the same relational thing, but it isn't just community. You can get community at the YMCA or the Rotary, or I don't know, whatever, or your dance group, or your square guys, or whatever. You can get community anywhere and connection, but they're making the point that when it comes to the praxis of the faith, prayer, scripture study, worship, hearing the word, service, that we got to do better. That this is exposed that we haven't been doing enough in that realm. I can't argue with them on that. I have a discipleship map. When I do my foundations class, I say you start here with baptism, you're in the church, and then you're a member of a church. God has saved you, God has blessed you. I should have had it up for you, but I just now thought about it. God has blessed you, and a lot of people, and you're brought into the community. You're in the church, but a lot of people stay right there. I'm a member. Jesus said, go and make disciples, not members. So what do? Well, we disciple people in the realm of stewardship, which is God blessed us, so we steward those blessings. And then evangelism, how we share in word and deed the good news of the gospel. God saved us, and so how do we share that? So the goal of the church should be to get people into this discipleship world, where they're serving and sharing God's blessings and the good news and living it out in their daily life. This doesn't mean that they're perfect. I always say this in my foundation talk. Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean you don't have problems. In fact, the best way people can see is that you're a graceful person. But our goal as a church needs to be making disciples and not just members. Okay, and I think that's really true, and helpful distinction. I love to tell this quick story. I don't know when I told it last, so you don't remember it. In my first congregation, when I first got there, there was a gentleman who passed away who was a head foreman at the cannery in Lodi. A very well thought of, member of Silverdale Lutheran. His family was big in the congregation, and he was fairly big in the community, and so people knew he was a Christian. They knew he went to Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Lodi. His name was Phil, and he was on the line one day overseeing things, and something went wrong, and Phil let out an expletive. And then someone near him said to his face, if he was my foreman, I wouldn't have said this, but said to his face, and you say you're a Christian. Because people look at, and they're always looking to see that you're a hypocrite, so they don't need to go. That was too harsh. Sometimes they're wanting to see more. But anyway, he said, you're a Christian? You said that? And I love what Phil said. He said, just think what I'd have said if I wasn't a Christian. But really, we want to be real people. We don't want to be, I think it's people living with grace and mercy for each other and for others is the way to go. So that's what they're saying. Faith formation. Keep at it, church. This is exposed that we weren't as in great a depth as we could have been. Engage and challenge people's information diet. They're going to plead that we have to enter the fray. Whether it's media, social media, whatever, people are getting their information from all kinds of places, and we got to somehow get the church in there to be a part of their information diet. And we try, but we can do better there. And I'm not exactly sure even what that would mean for us here more, but I'm open to thinking about it. We lean into these relationships, they say. We listen. We validate where we can validate. We challenge people not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We bring them back to the authentic Jesus. If we're going to lose people, we will. Let's make sure we only are losing them to the Jesus of the Bible. I think that's a challenging word. People need to see faith in action, they say. Not just word, but also deed. This is kind of a little bit of what we talked about last week. And again, more of the discipleship thing. But I'm hearing this from Gen Z. They want to see, and I thought to myself, I would hope they would see that at Silverdale Lutheran.
Well, boy, we do everything here.
We do everything. Thank you, Joyce.
I mean it.
Here, on our website, by the way, is right up here under new ministries, community outreach.
Yeah.
These are all the organizations. This isn't just what we do. We do a ton more than this. But these are all the organizations that we support either because we give them space for free or support them financially or have people volunteering in all of those. Let me just start scrolling.
Oh, it's amazing. It's simply amazing. Like we listed them yesterday. Yeah. PB, yesterday at the
Yes,
women's
retreat.
retreat, we were talking about faith. And so they ask us to list all of the things that we do here.
Mhm.
And it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's simply
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, so I want to say we have lots of room to grow, and I know there's big issues and societal things that are a tension and a struggle, but I think hopefully one would see that we are not just talk, we are also trying to walk the walk. But this is just the groups that we support. I always say, man, if you only knew all the ways that Silverdale Lutheran is influencing the individual households that come and how they then bless other people in their schools and their workplaces, that's really what I think is the powerful word. But nonetheless, this is what they're saying to us. These days, I'll put this in context, so don't worry about the not knowing what these days are. These days are almost entirely gone in America, and in both the data and our pastoral experiences, we've seen that before most folks believe, they need to experience the gospel tangibly through some combination of connecting to Christian community and seeing Christians exercise their belief in ways that show that Christianity actively promotes human flourishing. I totally get what they're saying here. I have a little bit of a struggle with it. And I think that'll come out in my last closing comments. But I think it's this basic point. People don't care what you know until they know how much you care. That's another way to say it in a short sense. But also that they want to see a Christian, they need community, but they also want to see a community that's helping people flourish. I'll leave my critique to the end. So people need faith in action, both word and deed. Don't merge with secular left agenda or religious right agenda, they're going to say. You got to walk this fine line. Don't fall off the horse on either side. At a corporate level, Christianity in the West will have to recapture many facets of this kind of Christianity that exists at the bottom of the power pyramid. So what they're going to say is we need to go back to when Christianity wasn't in Christendom. And so we have, 43% of the population that worshiped last month. So we're not a majority of worshipers anyway, but we're still a lot more than most places in Europe. Not all, but countries, but a lot of the countries. But so we're not on the top of the pyramid. We're not in control. The secularism has maybe won the day, but and as they say, secularism, that is the secularism. the secular is like the secular realm, but in essence, secularism here would be that there's nothing more to life than what meets the eye. That it's just, we are very sophisticated machines, and this type of thing. And so, to kind of removal of any kind of theistic or even pantheistic or panentheistic kind of influence, any influence of the divine or something like that. So secularism will continue to wash over the West in both its left and right manifestations, and Christians who wish to remain faithful will seek alliances with neither. These things will leave us ministering from a place of increasing vulnerability and declining power. However, as we can see from our brothers and sisters in East Asia, an increased cost of discipleship sometimes accelerates the fruitfulness and plausibility of the gospel. In other words, don't weep that you're not on the top anymore, if we're not on the top anymore. The church has usually not been there and has flourished when it's not. So yeah, we live in a counterculture. We now have to be countercultural in all kinds of ways. Well, that's good. Christianity has usually been in that place. All right, let's see, one more. Balance of confession and mission. This is that fall off the horse two sides that we talked about a while back with some churches are very doctrinal, like Pastor Bill. They love the Lutheran confessions and they're all about doctrine and belief and this, but then they are hurting on mission, like outreach. So where's our passion? Where's our DNA? And they want to balance. And again, I'm not sure that balance is the right way to come at it. But nonetheless, if I had to fault Silverdale Lutheran because of your pastor, we'd probably be more on the, Lutheran confessions, doctrinal, confessional place, because I think that's so important. That's the bright light that we have to share with people. But what about sharing it with people? Our mission is connect more to Christ. There's the doctrine. Through word and sacrament. And love Kitsap in the world. There's mission. And share the gospel. I think it can it become my passion and yours to think about the de-churched and reach out to them and make it a priority. Just like can we make it a priority when someone has the guts to walk down this aisle, that we have things in place to make sure they feel really welcome here. Is there a greeter? Is there someone after church who's willing to just stand out at that welcome center and be there in case somebody asks questions? We cannot rely on the Bob Greens and the Darlene Brits and the Happy Scots to do all the job. And Priscilla. Priscilla's jumped in there and done. We have our folks. It's not their job only. It's all of y'all's. So I think we need to think about that. Do we have a balance of confession and mission? This is their, like, okay, this is what you need to do differently. And I'm certainly thinking about that. Our leadership is thinking about it. I hope you'll think about it as well. I think we have time to go back to that question. Let me just exit out and go back to it. I want to hear from you a little bit before I share my final thoughts. I was going to break you up into small groups, but I don't know that we have time for that. So when you think about what you've heard already, what did I leave out? What did the authors miss? Do you have some conclusions some takeaways that are stirring in you that, like I say, something's gotten missed or left out? The problem with going, yeah, please, Kim, great, get us started. Yeah.
Well, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking a lot about how sometimes, we talk a lot about the need to make connection, and this sounds really basic, but sometimes I feel like we need sort of a class in how to get over social awkwardness. I feel like I have seen many people my age kind of come through in the 12 or 13 years that I've been worshiping, and so excited to see them, and I keep seeing them, and then even in a couple months they float away and I don't see them again. I'm like, I've got one family right now, and like while I'm good at making connections with people that I know well, it is harder for me to approach strangers. So I'm more of an introvert, I like deep connection.
Right.
And so, and I was even talking to Lisa Gregg today, because we were both at the women's retreat yesterday.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm so glad that I sat with you because I heard your name, but I didn't know who your face was.
Right.
And I said, I feel like we have a lot of that in the church. Like, there are so many people here that I see so often, but I don't even know their names.
Right.
Unless you're in like a group together, or you are in an activity where get to know each other.
Right.
You don't. And so I think so much of what we've talked about is the ability to make connection. And a lot of us are really only comfortable making connections with people who look like us or
Yeah.
are our age.
Right.
And sometimes we just meet, and especially, I am in this age of, we're all affected by the alienation. COVID made us maybe all a little out of practice on how to go up and introduce yourself to someone new.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just the basic, I'm not naturally like Bob Green or Darlene.
Right.
So
Right.
how do I become that way?
Yeah.
Is sort of what's been on my mind. It's really uncomfortable, but I'm like, oh, I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Some help in making
Yes.
those connections. Both just, how do you do that, and then also providing an environment like the women's retreat did for you would go a long ways. Really helpful. Let's keep going. I've got Sue in the back. Why don't you go to Sue and then Wade? Okay, that's fine. Mike. Mike. Okay. All right. Let's go there. Wade, you go, and then Sue. Yeah.
Okay. I am not an introvert.
Shocker.
This is a confession, yeah. No, I was a little confused, perhaps even disturbed by one of the slides talking about vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what it takes.
Yeah.
To your point, we do have to be vulnerable. If we're not willing to do that,
Yeah.
if we're controlled by fear of going to have a conversation, whether it's someone we've never met or someone that we know that's on the peripheral out there, and we're afraid of saying the wrong thing.
Sure.
I would submit that, I'm going to hound on this again, that empathic listening thing.
Yeah.
I think so many times we start to hear a story, but then we're formulating a response. And that's a difficult place to be in because
Sure.
you're not being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And the moment something happened to me this week that changed me. I felt it. The person I was talking with, I know they felt it. And the only thing I can say is I was willing to be so vulnerable that I cried with this person in a public place.
Right.
And I think that's what it takes, is a willingness to set that fear aside. All of those things, all of that, that's all great advice. But if we're not willing to set our fear aside and be vulnerable to the person that we're talking to, we're never going to have that deep-rooted conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it takes.
No, it does.
Is a willingness to say, I know I'm going to fall and it's going to hurt,
Yeah.
but he's got my back.
Yeah. Right.
And he put the words in my mouth, and
Yeah.
something happened there that day that was so powerful.
Yeah.
Again, it
Yeah.
drives me to tears. But
Yeah.
you guys know me. I
Yeah.
cry at the drop of a hat.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think the authors are saying that exact point. We're going to need to be vulnerable, and not just as individuals, but as a church to enter in and humble. So, no, that's good. It's stepping out in faith for sure, Sue. And by the way, this is recorded, and I'm going to be capturing what you're saying. Yeah, Sue,
So, two things.
go real close.
Real close. Boy, swallow the mic. So, when I listen to all of this, and I know that there's a time in my life where I looked at church as going to church to be fed. And it feeds my faith. It takes care of me for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
But what if Friday evening, I had a group of wonderful people that we met and celebrated this successful 75th celebration. And one of the things that came out of that was the success of the potluck.
Yep,
And that was a gathering that was purely fellowship.
yep,
There was no movement, there was no expectation of a lesson, there was no music, it was just to come and celebrate an event together.
yep,
So out of that, we have now, we're putting our focus on a quarterly event, which would revolve around food, but there would be no connection to anything but fellowship. And so look for
cool,
either
Yeah.
a spaghetti feed or a Chinese New Year event in February.
okay,
So that's
Good.
just out there.
And invite the community.
Yeah, and
love
invite
it.
the community.
Okay, so here's the key, I think, to add, kind of bring Kim's point and Wade's point with yours, is so then when people come to that, sit with someone you don't know. But now I need to teach you and coach you up on how to do that. So maybe when you guys get together, you have discussion questions on the table. I don't know, I'm not saying. But by the way, there was something more than just fellowship in that. There was a pastor with lederhosen. Anyway, no, that's a bad image. Okay, Debbie, you wanted to throw in real quick? Yeah.
What was I gonna say?
Oh, sorry,
Moment here.
I threw you off. We can go on and
No,
come
I
right back.
was you were talking about sitting with someone new. When I first started coming to church, I was very, very leery. I've been to several churches. I grew up Roman Catholic and had always been judged, and, I didn't know what to expect. And so I would sit in the back and be very quiet and just observe. And if anybody talked to me, it was really a big deal to me. But, well, I did stuff like that in high school too. I would feel uncomfortable, and then I would force myself to be around other people and to do things. And it helps me, not everybody's the same, but it helps me to grow. That's one reason why people say, well, I sit in my pew is such and such. I've never done that.
Yeah.
And that's how I've gotten to know people.
Yeah,
So
very
we
good.
do need to step outside of our comfort zones. If I didn't, I'd still be in the back whispering.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie, excellent. Were we over here? Do we have one or more, or two more, or, Bill, right up here in front, and then, and then right here. Mike, can you come on up to, yeah, right here.
I think it's helpful to just sort of keep in the back of your mind, whether you're with an individual or in a group or something, is
Yeah.
to, as things come up or are said, to be able to respond in a way that you have an opportunity to talk about your faith, or talk about Soleil Lutheran, or other things that are growing up, and just look for opportunities to discuss with them, and just be alert to things that they might bring up.
Absolutely, again, that listening, making space, non-judgmental, just tell me more about that. Here's a little coaching, Kim. Can you tell me more about that? If you actually have a conversation with somebody, it's like, wow, I do miss you, but can you tell me more about that? Might go be helpful, but I don't know. One more, Joyce, and then we'll,
Well, this is a little different.
okay.
You had asked me, I had asked you how to approach someone who wasn't coming back to church, a friend of mine, whom I know was a regular member.
Yeah.
And so I had a lunch with her this week, and I finally got to the point, I said, I haven't seen you at the late service, are you still coming? She said, no. I said, why not? She said, well, I'm just lazy, I guess. And I said, well, I think maybe COVID had a lot to do with that. And she said, yes, it certainly did. And I said, you need to come back. But the other thing I would like to add is I don't care what these guys said in their book, but I do feel that academia has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Okay,
I
good.
do.
You feel academia has a lot to do with it. First of all, thank you for having a lunch with someone. Thanks for bringing it up. Thanks for encouraging them. I think that's a good example, though. Remember I said there's turtles and skunks? And maybe, indeed, I guess I'm too lazy.
Yeah.
But she also might have been, I don't feel comfortable telling you, you know?
I know.
Yeah, and so that's would you just, and I know you wouldn't, but, so that's the challenge, especially when people are more turtle-y than skunky, as far as, really being out there and telling you, or, keeping it inside. But you made a go at it, and you might need to have another one in a month,
Yeah,
and then
I need another one.
maybe that will be there. As far as the academia, I think there needs to be more research there. I am really interested in doing more research with our young adults who have been through college in the last 15, 20 years. And I want to try and do that. I don't know that we got very many of that population filling out our survey. It would work if we just got like the 40 young people who have gone through our congregation in the last 10, 15 years. But I want to learn more about that, Joyce. I really wrestle with that too. But I think what the authors would say, it isn't academia itself. It's a number of factors that all fall together that make it hard to keep your faith during that time. It's a move. You want to know why? When we were and we've gotten away from it a little bit, again, COVID probably, I guess, but we used to have a couple events during the summer for our kids that are in academia and college to check in with them. How's it going? This type of thing. The number one thing they said with why they're not worshiping at college is they can't find a church like SLC. It's either a kind of big box kind of thing, or it's a liturgy and a church that's anyway. And we have to be careful. Correlation doesn't prove causation, but I'm with you. I have my issues with higher academia. So anyway, thanks for sharing that. Let me finish with sharing my final reasons for hope and get the bow on this, or not really, but kind of get this worked out. Okay, so I think we as a Lutheran congregation, and every voice in the choir is beautiful of Christianity. I'm not belittling any other church. I do want to say that we believe that worship is encountering you with God in Christ through the word preached, that the gospel coming to your ears as it was preached beautifully today by Jonathan, gives you faith and keeps you in the faith. The faith is not a static thing. I've got it, so I'm good. No, faith is a battle. This world is a battle, and it's not easy to believe, and it's hard to believe. And I think that's a gift that we have as a Lutheran church. I can't tell you how many people I've counseled who were told in their church that you can't have doubts. You're doing wrong. You stop it, And I just say, hey, if you have doubts, you're trying to believe. So come on and let the word work on you and receive the gospel. Let it come into your ears. So there's a beautiful message there. And then the Lord's Supper, we're sacramental. We believe that when you have the Lord's Supper, you're not just remembering Christ, you're receiving Him bodily into your life, into your heart. But here's the thing. What I need to teach y'all and myself is that it won't always feel like it. I mean, I've had really great meals, but some meals are just, I gotta feed the body. I gotta eat the kale. I don't know. Whatever. And sometimes it tastes like kale. Maybe you come here on a Sunday morning and it just wasn't your music style and the pastor was going off in this tangent and this and that. What did I get out of that? That's what the enemy's asking. But you did get something out of it. So something's happening. I think this is something we need to keep. And then our law gospel distinction, I I think this is a great asset, because when it comes to the woundedness that many people and the shame that they sometimes get, whether we agree with what the law says and what's right and wrong, we have those debates, but we have a distinction that we're all welcome here through the gospel of Christ Jesus. None of us are checked up the boxes. And so with that distinction, we should be a more graceful place for people, or a graceful place, some place that will indeed connect them to community and God. Here's my challenge. This is another takeaway. I know I got to finish here. Martin Luther, how many of you knew, since we're coming back from Germany, by the way, I'll do it now because I'm going to run out of time. Next week, we're going to do a presentation on our trip. So that's what's going to happen during this time.
Okay.
Next week, we're going to do a presentation on our Reformation Germany trip. That's what's going to happen next week. Okay, but did you know that Martin Luther got so frustrated with his congregation in Wittenberg that he quit preaching for a year?
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that? And the reason it is Wittenberg's moral laxity and lack of commitment and appreciation for this gospel of freedom that he had given them. I think he said something once like, you're staring at it like a cow stares at a new gate or something. Now Luther was wrong to do that. He shouldn't have quit. He shouldn't have thrown in the towel. But his critics would say, if you get your way, Luther, that's what's going to happen. If people don't have the law to make them do it, you better, or else they're going to just be. Well, so I don't get to, and thanks be to God I don't get to tell people, you better get out of your pajamas and come to church, or God isn't going to love you anymore. You're going to spend time in purgatory or something. I don't get to tell you that, and I don't want to. In fact, every time I even preach the law, my inside my guts dies, partly because that's what the law does. It kills you. But I always, and Jonathan, and we in this church, give you the gospel to bring you back to life. So I think that there is a challenge for a Lutheran church in particular on how to address some of this because of that. But I'm fine with it. That's the way it is. Expectations are key. I'm going to make this quick. Anytime I'm upset, usually it's because my expectations were not met. Whether it's a relationship, whether it's an organization I'm a part of. And oftentimes, as I'm listening to the data and listening to the people, they were let down. An expectation wasn't met. Whether that expectation was realistic or not almost really doesn't matter, but that expectation didn't happen. And I pray that we can work with that. But so that's my message to the de-churched, and also to me as a pastor, that it's about expectations, and do we have those in an appropriate place? What do you really expect from your church? And I can tell you this, your church is always going to give you the word and sacrament. It's going to give you the gospel. But yes, some expectations may not be met, and that will create frustration and upset, and I pray we can listen to those. Finally, my final reflection is grace and forgiveness on all sides, for the de-churched and the church. I would say to the de-churched, we're doing our best. We're sainted sinners. I'm doing my best, but I know I've let tons of people down. I remember my first parish when the lead pastor resigned 6 months after I was there as an associate, and there was some not good circumstances. It wasn't, anyway. But nonetheless, he got up and he apologized to all these people, and I'm like, that's weird. Like, and what he was saying wasn't for something like really horrible that he had done. There were bad things, but it was just like, I know I've let a lot of people down. And I was like, I don't ever want to have to say that. And then I grew up. And realized, I'm going to let people down all the time. I mean, I've had members say, well, Pastor Bill just cares about this or that or whatever, and all I can say is I need your grace, and Jonathan needs your grace, and our staff needs your grace, and our leadership needs your grace. Just absolutely. And I'm going to promise that I'm giving grace to the de-churched and people who are struggling to be here, and people who make decisions to not be here or get upset about this. Truthfully, my heart aches and hurts for each person who's gotten disconnected. And I hope through this class people have heard, and people are listening, by the way, to this live stream, and they are giving me feedback. One person said, I was going to take a job on Sundays, and I'm going to get a different job. Because, so it's like, wow, but I want everybody listening to know Jesus loves you, forgives you for everything, just like for me, and I ache for the reasons, and I don't judge you for them. We're human beings, and we get disconnected, but so let's be graceful to each other. I think that's my big takeaway, that's what's needed. And then with that ground, then maybe we can have those conversations. Okay, this has been tremendously you guys, that you want to be here and talk about this, your love, your care for your church and folks who are disconnected is inspiring to me. So thanks be to God. We're finishing up next week, Germany trip. Go in peace, serve the Lord. Setting up for quoters, if you can, would be great. Congregational meeting after the late service is in the sanctuary.